Where was your car built? All major auto manufacturers source globally, so components in your vehicle probably come from far and wide, via hundreds of suppliers on several different continents. Some automakers are trying to reel in suppliers to keep them close to the assembly plants. Until recent years, Ford's assembly plants had been geared to produce 1 or 2 models each, but the market is demanding an increasing variety of products. In response to changing market demand, Ford put into place a flexible manufacturing strategy. One of the first locations to implement this strategy is its Chicago assembly plant, the company's oldest operating factory. In early 2004, Chicago Assembly was closed and completely retooled. It can now produce a total of 6 vehicles off of 2 basic designs. These days, the Chicago plant is producing 3 new models: Ford Freestyle, the Ford 500, and Mercury Montego. The plant's new ability enables it to produce at near capacity all of the time. The potential savings are tremendous. The new strategy reaches far beyond the walls of this plant and includes an aggressive move to incorporate lean manufacturing techniques. Coordination and timing with suppliers is crucial, as is supply chain management.
On a Taurus Sable, the average was around 457 miles. That meant that the average piece of material coming into our assembly plant traveled 457 miles. For the Millennium program, when we launched a new model, we were able to reduce that number to right around 120 miles. So brought in our bullseye. Actually what we did was shrunk our bullseye. And we did that through a number of different ways. One way is through our sheet metal, which typically has the longest lead time. And we were able to reduce the distance, but we also were able to reduce the number of different suppliers we had for sheet metal. And we brought them within about 16 miles of the Chicago assembly plant. Virtually all the sheet metal now is produced by one of 2 suppliers. One that's 500 yards away, a Tower Automotive, an outside supplier. The second one is our own stamping plant, it's around 16 miles away. And that virtually covers 100% of all of our sheet metal. Our powertrains were coming from a number of different locations, 2 different engine plants and 2 different transmission plants. We've now reduced that to 1 engine plant, providing all of our powertrains, and our transmission plant also providing all of our powertrains. We've doubled inventory turns by reducing the amount of inventory. We've eliminated the warehousing outside. Our floor space in the plant is now dedicated to value add. 97% of it is now more value add in terms of actually producing the vehicle versus 87 or 88% that used to be producing the vehicle and 12% storing parts. Now we're down to 3% of the material in the assembly plant storing parts. And the most important change was, in terms of logistics management, was the supplier campus, which we built half a mile away from the Chicago assembly plant. What effectively was an old dump, a wasteland. And we put in 1.6 million square feet, brought in 12 different suppliers to supply major integrated assemblies, or modules as you call them, into the assembly plant. That also freed up floor space to add new models, add new variants, and provide more flexibility for the assembly plant.
The suppliers provide 60% of the plant's inventory with just-in-time deliveries. Located within sight of Chicago Assembly, the supplier park saves Ford $50 per vehicle in transportation costs. That amounts to $15 million annually if Chicago builds to its maximum capacity of 300,000 units.
We were able to reduce the travel time of the average part into the Chicago assembly plant. One of the enablers was the supplier campus, but we probably had over 250 suppliers, 12 of whom were in the supplier campus. Many of the other suppliers also went about a strategy. Our stamping suppliers, our engine plants, our transmission plants, also through a really concerted effort and a sourcing strategy, we were able to pull those suppliers closer to the Chicago assembly plant. It's all about flow. all about logistics and managing flow of material. And that is the change that I've seen in the industry more so than anything else. Of course, we're all working to reduce our development time. We're all working on product and innovation. But essentially it's flow of material, it's reducing that bullseye. It's managing the supply base, getting the supply base closer so that you're dealing with suppliers that are around the corner versus on the other side of the world.
Ford's application of new lean manufacturing techniques includes inline vehicle sequencing, or ILVS. It's part of Ford's enterprise model for manufacturing, which includes an order-to-delivery initiative designed to enable plants to reduce inventory and lead times. In some cases, parts are being put into vehicles in the assembly plant just 90 minutes after being produced in the supplier campus.
Lear is one of our suppliers. They supply headliners to us. They're the experts at making headliners, not Ford Motor Company. So what they've done is they've set up a facility at the manufacturing campus, and they've coordinated all the inbound material into them. And in a module like a headliner, you'll have wiring, you'll have NVH padding, you'll have visors, you'll have overhead consoles, you have lights, map lights, the substrate itself. You could get into DVD players now we put into headliners. You'll have airbags potentially in the future. So it becomes a module in itself, and Lear becomes the system integrator for that module. That module will be built in sequence and shipped to the plant in sequence just in time on a flow system. So although we may not necessarily have reduced the total number of suppliers, what we've done now is we've coordinated with Lear and let Lear, who's been producing headliners now for a long time, be the total system integrator for that specific module. In the case of headliners, incidentally, we have 118 different combinations of headliners. Before, we would have had to have in the assembly plant one of each of those 118 different headliners. Now Lear actually builds those in sequence. So again, when a vehicle comes out of our paint shop, Lear will start to build the headliner. We've been doing this for 100 years, and that's where the expertise lies. So when you take that assembly and now you move it outside to a system integrator, you need to provide that system integrator with that experience, that 100 years of experience. And so we had a team of people at each one of the suppliers in the campus, helping them on the assembly side. We were with them, helping them manage the logistics and going into their Tier 2 supply base. What we did was when we sat down with the suppliers, the integrated assembler, in this case ZF Lemforder, they're the system integrator for the rear axle. We said, which one of these suppliers are what we call a high-impact supplier, will have the greatest impact on your success or failure? And we looked at a number of different criteria. Are they putting new technology in? Have they been a supplier to Ford Motor Company before? Have they been a supplier to ZF Lemforder before? We actually came up with 8 different criteria and ranked the different suppliers. And in case of ZF Lemforder, we came out with about 12 different suppliers that would have a major impact for them. And we, Ford, went out and visited those suppliers, and in many cases we actually had our people working with the supplier through supplier technical assistance.
The Chicago Assembly Plant's flexible manufacturing is enabled by its network of neighboring suppliers that are producing integrated assemblies and delivering them in sequence. These lean manufacturing strategies provide efficiencies that enable Ford to provide better value to the customers. The new products that roll off this line are ready for distribution to dealers. Some are built to fill customer orders, and others will go into dealer inventories.
We will meet with our zone manager approximately 1 month in advance of the production time. At that point in time, we will then set the number of units with Ford Motor Company that we are going to take for production the following month. Then, as the weeks progress towards that month of production, we are scheduling vehicles on a weekly basis. And those vehicles can be scheduled for 2 purposes. They can be scheduled for stock, or they can be scheduled for a factory order, private individual type basis. The dealer then has certain allocation available to him in scheduling weeks leading up to the production weeks. And it's at that point in time when, if we do have a factory order specifically for a customer, that we will then spec that vehicle for that customer, and actually we will tag that vehicle with his name or her name on it. If we don't have a vehicle or a factory order ready to go, we will then order for stock. And it's at that point in time that we will spec out vehicles based on what we think our customer expectations and wants would be.
The 3 new vehicles that roll off this line bring a new level of competitiveness onto dealer lots, thanks to Ford's new flexible manufacturing and revamped supply chain management. The supply chain is worldwide in scope, but components still arrive at the assembly plant just in time, and that's the important improvement.